Hey guys, hope you're doing well. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about ratios like we did in the previous lesson, but we're going to use conversions now. You know, like when they give you a question that has meters and kilometers, well, you have to first be able to convert these before you can use ratios. Or maybe they give you volume, which is milliliters and liters, or time, which is like hours, weeks, seconds. You know, there's all these things. Or what about mass, like milligrams or grams or tons or kilograms? We're going to go over all of that in this lesson. Okay, so we're going to start with distance. So with distance, I just want you to write down the following. So we've got kilometers, then we've got meters, then we've got centimeters and millimeters. Okay, now in between here, I want you to put the number 1000. Then in between here, 100, and then in between here, 10. Then if you're going from kilometers to millimeters, you're going to multiply. And then if you are going this way, you are going to divide. Okay, so let me give you some examples so you can see what I mean. So I want you to let's convert 3 kilometers to centimeters. Okay, so what you do is you go to the kilometers and we want to go to centimeters. So we're going to go to the right. Okay, so let's see what numbers we get along the way. So from kilometers to meters, you're going to multiply with 1000. Okay, and that's meters. Then to go from meters to centimeters, you're going to multiply with 100. Okay, and then if you had to go work this all out, it would be 300,000 centimeters. Okay, let's do another one. Let's now convert, let's go with 21 centimeters to, well, let's go 21 millimeters to meters. Okay, so we're starting at millimeters now, which is over here, and we want to go to, so let's highlight that. We want to go from here and we want to go all the way to meters, which is over here. So now we're going to be going to the left. You see, we're following the arrow going to the left because we're going from millimeters to meters. So we will divide. When you go to the left, you divide. When you go towards the right, you multiply. So we're going to say 21. Okay, I could have actually chosen a better number. And then you're going to first divide. So when you go from millimeters to centimeters, you're going to divide by 10. Okay, and then when you go from centimeters to meters, you're going to then divide by 100. Okay, and if you had to go work that all out, it would be 0.021. And then you should say meters. Okay, so you understand that? Now let's go practice that with ratios. So just make sure you've written this thing over here down. So you see, here's where we have to do this. Here we've got meters. And then here we've got centimeters, okay? So what we'll do is, let's take this number over here, for example, which is in meters, and we need to convert that into centimeters so that both of these will be the same, okay? So, and the rule is, guys, not the rule, but to make your life easier, millimeters is very small. This is the smallest, and then kilometers is really, really long, okay? So this is the largest. You always want to choose the largest one over here. Okay, so you see here we've got meters, which is larger. It's more on the left side compared with centimeters, which is more on the right hand side. So this is the largest, second largest, third largest, and then fourth largest. Okay, so what you must do is always choose the largest one over here. So the largest one is meters, and then change that one. So you always change the largest. So always change the largest unit. Okay, so we're going to convert 4 meters, here's meters, to centimeters. So we're just going to go that way over there. So we're going to multiply, because when you go to the right, you multiply by 100. Okay, so we're going to say times by 100, and that'll be 400. So we actually have 400 centimeters and 120 centimeters. Now we can start the simplifying process. So now that these are actually the same, we can get rid of the centimeter. We can just say 400 and 120. Okay, So, what is the biggest number that you know that can go into both? It doesn't have to be the biggest number that there is, but the biggest number that you know. Okay, well, I know that the number 10 can go into both, so I'll start there. Maybe you have a bigger number. That's fine, you can use that as well. We will all get to the same answer at the end because we're simplifying. Okay, so if I divide both by 10, I would end up with 40 over here and 12 over here. Now I can go a little bit more. I know that the number 4 can go into both of these. You could have even used the number 2 if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. Now if you divide by 4 over there, you're going to get 10. And if you divide by 4 over here, you're going to get 3. And then you cannot go any further. And so that would be your answer. Here's the next one. So here we've got kilometers and meters. So we said that you must always choose the largest unit. So remember, the largest unit is here on the left, and then the smallest unit is here on the right hand side. So kilometers is a larger unit than meters. Okay, what that means is 1 kilometer is larger than 1 meter. So we're going to change this one. So we have to change from kilometers to meters. Okay, so that means we're going to the right. So we need to multiply with 1,000. Okay, so if you multiply 2 with 1,000, you end up with 2,000. And then here you end up with 1,500. And these are in meters. So because these are now the same, we can ignore that. Okay, and now we just simplify like we normally would. Now you could start with whatever number you want, but I wouldn't start with the number 2. You could, but it's going to take you forever to get to the final answer. The goal is to use whatever numbers you're comfortable with, but try to make them as big as possible so you get to your answer as quickly as possible. Okay, so for example, the number 100 can go into both of those. Yes, there is numbers that are bigger than 100 that you could have used, but this is a nice starting point. So if you had to divide these two, you end up with 20. And if you had to divide these two, you end up with 15. Now, the number 5 can go into both of these, so we divide both sides by 5, and so that's going to give you 4 and 3. And so you cannot go any further than that, and so that is your answer. So here's our next one. So you see here we've got millimeters, and here we've got meters, so we need to convert. Now, I suggest you always convert the biggest unit. So you see meters, remember the left-hand side. The more left you are, that's the largest unit. And then on the right-hand side, those are the smallest units. So meters is further to the left than millimeters. Okay? So always choose the largest unit and change that one. So you're going to now change meters to millimeters. Okay? So we're going to go from meters to millimeters. So when you go to the right, you multiply. Okay? So we're going to start with 1,500 meters, and then to go from meters to centimeters, you multiply that with 100, and then to go from centimeters to millimeters, you multiply that by 10. And if you then had to work this out, you'd end up with 1,500,000. So we could say 150 millimeters and 1,500,000 millimeters. Now these are both the same, so we don't need to put the millimeter sign anymore. And now we just start to simplify. Okay, so I'm going to start with the number. You could start with whatever number you want, but I'm going to start with the number 50. I know that the number 50 can go into both. So 50 can go into this one 3 times, and this I'm going to need a calculator. So we're going to divide that by 50, and that's going to give us 30,000. Okay, now the number 3 can go into both of these. So I'm going to divide this by 3, and I'm going to divide this by 3, and so that's going to give us, let's write our answer here. It's going to give us 1 and then 10,000. 1 to 10,000. Now we're going to look at mass conversions. Okay, so we start with the largest mass unit that we have, which is ton. Then, or let's write that a little bit lower. These are much easier than distance ones. You'll see why now. Then we get kilograms, and then we get grams, and then we get milligrams. Now what's nice about these ones is you only have to put the number 1,000 in between all of them. You don't have to remember 10, 100, 1,000. And then you just go, if you go to the right once again, you multiply. If you go towards the left-hand side, then you divide. Easy as that. Okay, so you could maybe just write that down. I'm not going to do an example showing you how to do that. Let's just go straight to the actual, the ratio examples. Okay, so just make sure you've written that down. So here's the first example. So you see we've got different units here. We've got kilogram, which is over here, and then we've also got gram, which is over here. So what I suggest is you take the largest one, not the largest number, the largest unit. Now remember, your largest unit is always the one on the left, the smallest unit is the one on the right, and then as you go more towards the left, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay? So the largest out of these two, the largest unit would be this one, because it's closer to the left-hand side. So change that one, okay? So we're going to change 4 kilograms into grams. So to go from kilograms to grams, we're going to the right, so you are multiplying, and the number you use is 1,000. So you're going to multiply that by 1,000, and that gives you 4,000. So we're going to put 4,000 grams over here, 120 grams over there, and now because it's grams on both, you can just leave it out. So let's just write it like that. Now we need to find the biggest number that can go, or a number that can go into both. Now you can start with any number you like as long as it goes into both. And if you're doing this, like let's say you and your friend are busy trying this example, one of you might decide to use one kind of number and the other person might use a different type of number. But when you get your answer at the very end, then it will be exactly the same. But along the way, if you use different numbers, it's going to look different, but at the end it'll be the same. So for example, I know that the number 10 can go into both of these, okay? But you could have used the number 20, even the number 40 would have worked. You could have even used the number 2, but I recommend using as big a number as possible, otherwise it just takes very long. Okay, so if you divide this by 10, it just gives you 400, and then if you divide this one by 10, it'll give you 12. Now we know that the number 2 can go into both, but also the number 4. So I'm going to use the number 4. So I'm going to divide this side by 4 and divide this side by 4, and then I end up with 100 over here and 3 over there. Now there is no number that can go into 100 and that can go into 3. And so that would be our final answer. All right, so I hope that this lesson is making sense so far. We're still going to do a few more maths examples, and then we're going to go on to volume, where we'll just do 2 examples, and then we'll go on to time. Okay, so, and then that'll be everything that you need to know for ratio. So, or for ratio with conversions, should I say. So here's the next one. So you see here we have ton and we also have kilograms. That's over there. So always take the largest unit. Now remember the largest unit is the one that's further on the left. So that'll be this one. And let's change that one. So we're going to change 2 ton to kilogram. So to go to kilogram, you are going to go to the right. So you're going to multiply. And you're going to multiply by 1,000. And so that's going to give you 2,000 kilograms. So let's go write that down. 2,000 kilograms, and then 750 kilograms, and then because it's kilograms on both, you can cancel that out. Okay, now we need to find the biggest number that can go into both. So you could choose a whole bunch of different numbers. You could choose the number 2, but that'll just take really long. You could choose the number 10, but I'm going to be a little bit more fancy, and I'm going to go with a bigger number, which would be 50. The number 50 can go into both. But if you didn't know that, then start at 10. Even start at 2 if you really want to, and then just keep going until you get to a very simplified answer that cannot go any further. So the number 50 can go into 2,000 40 times. And the number 50 can go into 750 15 times. And you can use a calculator for that. Now we can go further. So the number 5 can go into both of those. And so that's going to give us 8 and then 3. And then there is no number that can go into both of those. And so there's your answer. So here's our next example. So we have grams, which is over here. And then we have kilograms, which is over here. So we always take the one that's furthest to the left and we change that one. Okay, it just makes the calculations easier. You can go the other way, but you're going to start getting decimals and weird stuff like that. Okay, so we're going to change kilograms to grams. So we're going to go to the right. So you multiply by 1,000 and that's going to give you 3,000 grams. Okay, so we're going to go 3,000 grams and then 150 grams. Okay, so now you need to divide by the same number on both sides. So I'm going to go with the number 10. You might use a different number. Don't worry. At the end, our answers have to be the same. So this would give you 15, and this would give you 300. Now the number 5 can go into both of those. So there and there. And so that's going to give you 3. And then this divided by 5 is going to give you 60. Now the number 3 can go into both of these. And so that's going to give you 1 and then 20. And now that cannot go any further, and so that's the answer. Okay, let's do one more mass question, and then for mass, and then we're going to go to volume. We will just do 2 quick ones, and then we'll go on to time. Okay, I know it's getting a bit long, but yeah, this is really important stuff. And you're awesome if you're still here in this part of the video. So here we have our last example. So the units we have is milligram. Okay, so we've got milligram and gram. Okay, so the largest one is always the one that's furthest to the left, so that's going to be the gram. So we're going to change that one to milligrams. Okay, and so to go from grams to milligrams, you're going to multiply by 1000, and that'll give us 2000 milligram. So then we have 150 and 2000, and so now the number 10 can go into both. So we divide by 10, divide by 10. And so you end up with 15, and you could divide by a different number if you wanted to. And then 2000 divided by 10 is going to be 200. Then the number 5 could go into both, so we divide by 5, and that's going to give us 3. And then 5 goes into there 40 times. You could use your calculator for that. And then we cannot go any further than that. And so that would be our final answer. So I know I said that we only had a few more mass ones, but I just wanted to add one more because this one has something quite interesting. So let's just quickly go draw our chart. Ton, kilogram, gram, milligram. You must just always remember this. It must always be in order. It's very important. And then if we go this way, you multiply. If you go this way, we divide. Okay, now kilogram is over here. And then milligram is all the way over here. So the largest one is kilogram. So we need to convert kilograms to milligrams. So the way that you do that is you're going to take the 1 kilogram, and then you are going to multiply by 1000 to get to grams. And then you're going to multiply by another 1000 to get to milligrams. And so if you had to work that out, you're going to end up with a million. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. So now we have 1500. And we have a million. So I'm going to divide both of these by 500 because I know that the number 500 would go into both. And so this would give us 3. Now this you can do on your calculator. I'm definitely going to do it on my calculator. And so that's going to give us 2000. And now that cannot be simplified any further because nothing can go into 3 and 2000. There's no number that can do both, and so that would be the answer there. So I just wanted to show you that one because you had to do a double conversion over here. Okay, so now we're going to move on to volume. Volume is like when you pour water into a glass. You know, like if you pour water into a glass, you get milliliters, and then if you buy like a 2-liter Coke, well, those are pretty much the things we're going to look at here. So all that you need to know is that the liter is the largest one. Let's write that here. Milliliters is the smaller one. And so if you go this way, multiply. If you go this way, divide. And the number between them is 1000. Okay, that is it. That's all that you need to know. There's only 2 that we really get tested on. So let's go practice 2 examples, and then we'll move on to our last part, which is time. All right, so here we go. Here's our first one. So we've got 400 milliliters. So we've got milliliters, and then we've got liters. So the one that's on the left is always the largest one, and that's the one I always recommend that you change just to make the maths much easier. So we're going to say 2 liters, and we're going to convert that into milliliters. So we are going to go from liters to milliliters. So we multiply by 1000. So that's going to become 2000. Well, let me just show you here. We're going to multiply by 1000, and so that'll be 2000 milliliters. So now we have 400 milliliters and 2000 milliliters. So we can cancel that out. And now we just simplify. So the number 100 can go into both. But you don't have to choose 100. You could have chosen 10 or 50 or whatever you want, as long as it's a number that can go into both. And then you just keep simplifying until you get to a final answer, which will always look the same at the very end. And that's what's nice about this. It's not like if you choose different numbers, you get different answers. That would be horrible. That's like writing an English test. So I don't like English because, I mean, you can each person could write so many different things, like a essay, But I know a lot of people love English, but I prefer maths because the answer is always the same at the end. Like, there's different ways to get there, but at the end, it's either right or wrong. I love that. But I know some people don't, so... And so if we do this way, it's going to give us a 4 over there, and then this would give us 20. Now we can carry on. The number 4 can go into both of these. You could have even said the number 2. Now 4 can go into 4 once, and 4 can go into 20 5 times. And so there's the answer. One more of these, and then we're going to move on to time. Okay, so let's just remember liters, milliliters, 1,000, multiply that way, divide that way. So your goal, your job, is to make sure you remember all of the conversions I've showed you in this lesson. The one for mass, what else did we do? I've forgotten already. We did mass, distance, we're busy with the volume, and then time. Okay, so here we have liters and milliliters. Always choose the one that's furthest to the left to change. So that will be this one. Not further to the left here. I mean further to the left out of these units. Okay, so 3 liters, if you multiply that by 1,000, that'll give us 3,000 milliliters. So we now have 3,000 and 1,200. So, okay, now you need to find a number that can go into both. And use the biggest number that you can, because it just makes your life a little bit faster or easier. But if you choose a smaller number, it is fine. It will get to the same answer eventually. Okay, so that's going to give us 30. And then over here, we're going to end up with 12. Now, the number 2 can go into both of these. And you might choose a different number. But that'll give us 15 over here. 15 and 6. Oh, we can go further. The number 3 can go into both of those. And so we should eventually all end up with the same answer of 5 and 2. Okay, time. Now time is where we talk about things like seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years. And of course we could go decades and all of these things, but these are typically the ones that we need to know. So I just want you to know the basics. I want you to know that there are 60 seconds in a minute. These are all things you do know, but just make sure. There's 60 minutes in 1 hour. Then there is, let's see, 24 hours in a day. That means like the whole night and day, 24 hours. There are 7 days in a week, 52 weeks in a year, and then 12 months in a year. 12 months in a year. Okay, so those are the basic ones that you need to know. A common mistake that learners make, please listen to me carefully. If we say, for example, 1,2, let's say we say 1,2 hours. A lot of learners, so this is wrong, whatever I'm about to do now, this is wrong. A lot of learners will say that this is 1 hour and 20 minutes. Not correct at all. That 2 does not mean 20 minutes. Even if I said 1,25, it does not mean 1 hour and 25 minutes. So what you would rather do is you would rather say multiply by 60, and this would actually end up giving you 75 minutes. That's actually 75 minutes, which is the same as 1 hour and 15 minutes. You see, so this part here is not the minutes. Okay, so just look out for that. If you ever have to change hours to minutes, rather just multiply by 60. Don't be like 1 hour 25. It's not correct. Okay, so let's do some examples and then we are done. So here we have months and years. So you wouldn't change this one to years because that 8 months isn't even 1 year. So we can rather just change 2 years. So we know that in 1 year there is 12 months. So in 2 years, there is 24 months. So we can change that to 24 months like that. And then you can get rid of the months because now it's the same. So we just have 8 and 24. And then we just do the same thing we normally do. So the number 2 goes into both. but there's better numbers we can choose. You could choose the number 4, that goes into both. You could even choose the number 8, because the number 8 goes into both, okay? But let's pretend you chose the number 4. We still get to the same answer at the very end. So that's going to give us 2, and 24 divided by 4 is 6. Now, the number 2 can go into both of those. So that's going to give us 1, and then 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, weeks and days. Well, we know that, don't change this one to weeks, because that's going to be like a weird number. It's going to be a decimal. But 8 weeks, we know that in 1 week, we have 7 days. You know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sorry, that sounded a bit wrong to me. So if we want to have 8 weeks, well, then you're just going to say multiply by 7, and that'll be 56 days. 56 days. So we can say 56 days and 16 days. And then we can get rid of the days now, because those are exactly the same. And now we just do the same thing we've been learning about. So we could divide, the number 2 goes into both of these. You could have used a different number as well, as long as it can go into both. So that'll be 28 and 8. Then the number 2 can go into both of those. Even the number 4 can go into both of those, but it's okay. We can just use the number 2 for now. And then that'll be 14 and 4. And then the number 2 can go into both of these, and that'll be 7 and 2. And that is it. You cannot go any further than that, and so that would be the answer. And so I've got 3 more examples for you, and then we're done. Well done if you've made it this far. It's really excellent. Okay, so here we've got hours and minutes. Now, you wouldn't change minutes to hours. That's a bit weird. It's going to be like 1 comma something. Let's rather just change this into minutes. So we know that in 1 hour, that's 60 minutes. So if you have 2 hours, well, that's going to be 120 minutes. So we're going to say 120 minutes. And then, or let's just say minutes. And then over here, we're going to say 100 minutes. And now, because it's minutes and minutes, we can just cancel it. Or let's just leave it there. And then on the next line, I'll just say 120 and 100. Okay. Now, the number 10 can go into both. You could have even used the number 20, but the number 10 also works. You could have used 5. It doesn't really matter. You will get to the same answer at the end. So if you divide those two, you get 12. And then if you divide these two, you get 10. Now, the number 2 can go into both of these. And so that's going to give you 6 and 5. Okay? And now there's no number that can go into both of those. And so that would be the end. Okay, here we have 58 minutes and 3.2 hours. So I would change this one. Now, here's where learners make mistakes. Remember, I showed you this earlier. So what would be wrong here, what would be incorrect, is if you said that was 3 hours and 20 minutes. A lot of learners do that. It's not correct at all. What you rather want to do is just remember that to go from hours, remember that in 1 hour, there's 60 minutes. 1 hour is the same as 60 minutes. So just multiply this by 60. So just say 3.2 multiplied by 60 on your calculator, and that'll give you 192 minutes. Okay, so that'll be 192 minutes. And then this would be 58 still. Okay, now because we have minutes on both sides, we can just delete that or get rid of it. Okay, now the number 2 can go into both. So, geez, what is 192 divided by 2? Calculator, 96, and then 29. Geez, now what number can go into both of those? There is actually no number that can fit into 96 and 29. And so that would be the final answer for that one. And then here is our last example. Well done. This has been quite a long lesson, but you've made it. So here we have seconds and minutes. Now, I wouldn't change this one to minutes because it's going to be like some weird decimal, like 0 comma something, because this isn't even 1 minute. So it will be like 0 comma something. Rather change this one. So we know that in 1 minute, we have 60 seconds. Okay. So in 2 minutes, we would have 120 seconds. So we can change this to 120 and this to 42. And then, okay. So I know that the number 2 can go into both of these, and so that would be 21 and 60. Now the number 3 can actually go into both of these. It could go in here 7 times, and it would go into this one 20 times. And then we would not be able to go any further because there is no number that can go into 7 and 20 at the same time.